There is a prophecy in Daniel chapter 8 that biblical scholars avoid discussing publicly, not because it is false, but because its implications are too disturbing for the modern world. While global leaders like Donald Trump, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin reposition their nations on an increasingly tense geopolitical chessboard, this prophecy reveals that something much bigger is happening behind the scenes of human history. Daniel saw a system of judgment that would begin silently, evaluating every person on earth before the world even realized it, and prophetic calculations indicate that we are dangerously approaching its final phase. What will happen in 2026 is no coincidence. It is the fulfillment of a prophetic sequence that began millennia ago and that few truly understand. Daniel chapter 8 records one of the most intense visions in the entire Bible. The prophet saw a ram with two horns being attacked by a swift goat coming from the west. This goat had a noticeable horn between its eyes, but when it was at the height of its power, the horn broke off and four smaller horns arose in its place. From one of these horns grew a small power that grew to the level of the heavenly host. The vision was so intense that Daniel fainted and was ill for days. But the most disturbing element wasn't the sequence of empires he saw rise and fall. It was the time period mentioned, 2,300 evenings and mornings. When the angel Gabriel appeared to explain the vision, he said something shocking. This prophecy was sealed for the end times. It wasn't for Daniel's day, but for a future generation that would see its final fulfillment. And that generation may very well be ours. The Bible uses a consistent principle in time prophecies. One prophetic day equals one literal year. This principle appears in Ezekiel chapter 4 verse 6 and Numbers chapter 14 verse 34. When we apply this code to the 2,300 evenings and mornings of Daniel, we arrive at 2,300 literal years. Scholars have identified the starting point of this prophecy in the Persian decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, issued in 457 BC. By making the correct chronological calculations, considering the calendar transition and documented historical events, this prophetic line extends through the centuries, touching crucial moments in human history. Most impressively, this prophecy did not end in the past. It is connected to a celestial event that Daniel saw, the cleansing of the sanctuary. And this sanctuary is not a physical temple in Jerusalem. It is something much greater, something that is happening right now as you watch this video, in a dimension that most people completely ignore. Daniel chapter 8 verse 14 declares, "Until 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed." Which sanctuary? The temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD and was never rebuilt. Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli leaders occasionally speak of a third temple, but to this day it does not exist. So was Daniel wrong? No. He was seeing something that transcends human constructions. The book of Hebrews reveals that there is a heavenly sanctuary, a true tabernacle that the Lord erected, not man. It is the original sanctuary of which the earthly temple was only a shadow. And in this heavenly sanctuary, according to Hebrews chapter 9, Christ entered once and for all to perform a work of mediation. But the prophecy of Daniel speaks specifically about the purification of the sanctuary. In the language of the Old Testament, purification of the sanctuary was connected to the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the most solemn day of the Jewish calendar. A day of judgment, review of cases, final decisions on who would remain in God's people and who would be cut off. Daniel chapter 7 describes a scene of heavenly judgment. Thrones were set in place, the Ancient of Days took his seat, thousands upon thousands attended him, and the books were opened. This is the scene of the heavenly court. It is not the final judgment after the second coming of Christ. It is an investigative judgment that takes place before Jesus returns. Why? Because when Christ returns, he will already have brought the rewards with him, as stated in Revelation chapter 22, verse 12. The decisions will have already been made. Every case will have already been judged. This concept is deeply disturbing to many because it means that there is a court operating now, reviewing records, evaluating lives, determining eternal destinies while the world continues its routine. While Xi Jinping expands the social credit system in China, monitoring and judging every citizen through algorithms and surveillance cameras, a real judgment is taking place in a sphere that no technology can reach. And according to Daniel's prophetic chronology, this judgment began exactly when it should have, and is nearing its conclusion. If the prophecy of the 2,300 evenings and mornings marks the beginning of a heavenly judgment process, how long would that process last? The Bible does not provide a specific date for its end, but it does provide clear signs that there will be a generation that will see the end. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24 that when we see all these things, we will know that it is near, at the very gates. And this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. Scholars of prophecy have identified prophetic patterns and cycles that converge in specific periods. Interestingly, 2026 marks exactly 200 years since significant historical events related to the 19th century prophetic movement. We are not setting dates for Christ's return. That would be presumptuous, and the Bible is clear that no one knows the day or the hour, but we can discern the seasons. And the political, technological, spiritual, and global signs we see now suggest that we are in the final phase of the pre-Advent judgment. When that judgment is over, the door of grace will close and Christ will stand, declaring that it is finished. While the heavenly judgment assesses hearts and spiritual choices, something sinister is happening on earth. Let's return to the vision in Daniel chapter 8. The power of the little horn that grew and became great, even to the host of heaven, is not merely a political empire of the past. It is a system that spans centuries and culminates in the end times. This power has cast truth to the ground, interfered with the heavenly ministry, and established a religious system that mixes truth with error. Scholars have identified specific characteristics of this power. It would arise among the empires represented in the vision. It would have religious and political authority. It would change times and laws as described in Daniel chapter 7. It would persecute the saints of the Most High, and it would last for a specific prophetic period. History records that a specific religious political system emerged precisely when and where prophecy indicated, fulfilled every described characteristic, and dominated during the exact prophetic period. But most importantly, this system did not disappear. It transformed, adapted, and today is positioned to play a crucial role in the end times. The Pope has been engaging in dialogue with leaders of all religions, including Islam, promoting a global religious unity that appears positive on the surface, but prophetically sets the stage for the ultimate deception. If you've made it this far, you've already understood more about Daniel's prophecy than most Christians in the world. You saw how a vision given 2,500 years ago connects directly with control systems, celestial judgment, and global events that are unfolding now. This is not ordinary information. It is prophetic revelation that can completely change your perspective on the time in which we live. And if you want to continue receiving this type of content, if you want to be prepared for what's coming next, if you want to understand the next layers of this extraordinary prophecy, subscribe to this channel now, because what comes next is even more impactful. Let's connect this prophecy from Daniel with Revelation, reveal how the final system of the Antichrist is already in operation, and show you what you need to do spiritually to be on the right side when heavenly judgment comes upon your name. Click subscribe now, because you won't want to miss the next video. Revelation chapter 13 describes two beasts, one that rises from the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns, and another that rises from the earth with horns like a lamb, but speaks like a dragon. These beasts represent ultimate powers that will control the global economy, politics, and religion. The second beast, also called the false prophet, will cause all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and no one will be able to buy or sell without this mark. This description seemed impossible for centuries. How could one power control all buying and selling globally? Today, the answer is obvious. Digital technology. Central bank digital currencies are being developed by the United States, China, the European Union, and dozens of other countries. These currencies are not like regular money. They allow total control over every transaction. The government can literally shut down your money if you disobey. And when these currencies are combined with mandatory digital identity, the system will be complete. Now connect this to Daniel. The heavenly judgment will determine who remains faithful to God, while the beast system will force a visible and economic choice here on earth. It is no coincidence that Daniel received his visions while in the Middle East, that Jesus ministered in the Middle East, and that Revelation repeatedly focuses on Jerusalem and the region. The Middle East remains the prophetic epicenter of the world. Israel is surrounded by nations that have historically opposed its existence. Iran, led by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is developing nuclear capabilities while funding anti-Israel militant groups throughout the region. Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly warned that Iran poses an existential threat. Vladimir Putin's Russia is deeply involved in Syria, establishing a permanent military presence just kilometers from Israel's border. Turkey, under Erdogan, has neo-Ottoman ambitions and positions itself as a leader of the Islamic world. At the same time, something surprising has happened: the Abraham Accords. The United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan have normalized relations with Israel, something unthinkable a decade ago. Saudi Arabia, the largest Arab power, is in negotiations to do the same. These changes create the illusion of peace, exactly what prophecy predicts before the end. Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3, "When people say peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly." Daniel chapter 7 describes a fourth beast, terrifying and frightening, extremely strong, with large iron teeth. This beast represented Rome, but it had 10 horns, symbolizing divisions within the empire. History confirms this. The Roman Empire was never conquered militarily. It fragmented internally into multiple kingdoms that became modern European nations. Daniel chapter 2 presents the same sequence through the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw in a dream: a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, legs of iron and feet of iron mixed with clay. The legs of iron were Rome. The feet represent the final stage, where there will be attempts at union that will not fully consolidate, just as iron does not mix with clay. The European Union is exactly that. 27 nations trying to function as a unit, but maintaining conflicting identities and interests. Leaders like Giorgia Meloni in Italy, Emmanuel Macron in France, and Olaf Scholz in Germany struggle to maintain cohesion, while nationalist forces pull in opposite directions. But prophecy indicates that there will be a final union, temporary but powerful, especially in religious and economic aspects. And this union will play a crucial role in the final events. South America rarely appears in prophetic discussions, but it is being strategically positioned on the global chessboard. Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and other nations face chronic political instability, making them vulnerable to authoritarian solutions presented as stability. Nayib Bukele in El Salvador demonstrated how desperate populations accept extreme control in exchange for security. He implemented Chinese-style surveillance, mass arrests without due process, and a concentration of power unprecedented in the region's recent history. And he is popular precisely for that reason. People are willing to trade freedom for order. This mentality is spreading. South American leaders are observing and learning. When severe economic crises hit the region, and they will, entire populations will clamor for strong leaders who promise immediate solutions. And these leaders will implement digital control systems, mandatory identities, and digital currencies with programmable restrictions. South America will be integrated into the global system, not through military conquest, but through economic dependence and popular despair. And when the final system of the Mark of the Beast is implemented globally, these nations will already have the technological infrastructure and social mindset necessary to accept it immediately. Biblical prophecy speaks clearly about Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, European powers, the Middle East, and final systems. But where are the United States? The greatest military and economic superpower in human history does not explicitly appear in the prophecies of Daniel or Revelation. Or does it? Revelation chapter 13 describes the second beast that rises from the earth, different from the first one that rises from the sea. In prophetic symbolism, waters represent peoples, multitudes, and densely populated nations. Earth represents less populated regions. This beast has horns like a lamb, suggesting Christian principles and religious freedom, but speaks like a dragon, revealing its true nature. Scholars have identified characteristics that remarkably match the United States. It arose in a less populated region at the correct prophetic time, was founded on principles of religious and civil liberty, grew rapidly to become a global superpower, and is positioned to exert ultimate influence through economic and political pressure. The text says that this beast will cause the earth and its inhabitants to worship the first beast. This means that American power, possibly through economic collapse or a security crisis, will use its influence to establish a global religious political system that will culminate in the imposition of the mark of the beast. The most dangerous characteristic of the final system will not be its obvious cruelty, but its appearance as a legitimate solution. When global crises intensify, when wars threaten to erupt into nuclear conflict, when economic collapse grips all nations, when natural disasters increase in frequency and intensity, desperate humanity will cry out for unified leadership. And a leader or system of leaders will emerge who promises peace, security, prosperity, and unity. This leader will have the support of the major powers, the United States, Europe, China, and moderate Islamic nations. He will have religious approval from Christian, Catholic, and Islamic leaders, as well as representatives of other religions. The UN will support him, global corporations will support him, the media will promote him as the savior of civilization, and it will implement a system that, on the surface, will seem fair and necessary. A brand, an identifier, a system that ensures resources are properly distributed, that trustworthy people have access, and that extremists are neutralized. But this brand, this system, will directly violate a specific commandment of God, forcing a choice between obedience to God or submission to the human system. And most will choose the system because it will seem rational, necessary, and good. Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24, verse 24, that in the last days false Christs and false prophets would appear with signs and wonders so convincing that they would deceive, if possible, even the elect. Daniel chapter 12, verse 4 records the divine command. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many will rush from one place to another, and science will multiply. We are in that time, Human knowledge doubles every few months now. People literally run from one side of the planet to the other. Commercial flights cross continents in hours. Digital information travels instantly, and the prophetic knowledge that was sealed is being understood. Previous generations read Daniel and couldn't connect the pieces because the technological, political, and social elements didn't exist. Now they do. Every element of the prophecy can be seen clearly if we open our eyes. And with this revelation comes responsibility. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 27 declares, "It is appointed unto men once to die, but after this, the judgment, each person shall be judged." Heavenly judgment is happening now for those who profess to serve God. The final judgment will come after the second coming for all humanity. But before Christ returns, before the time of grace ends, God is sending a final warning through ordinary people who study prophecy and share truth. The prophecy of Daniel chapter 8 is not just ancient history or future speculation, it is present reality. The celestial judgment that began in the fulfillment of the 2,300 evenings and mornings is now evaluating every life, and it is nearing its conclusion. Global signs are converging. Total control technology, extreme geopolitical tensions, digital economic systems poised for centralization, artificial religious unity being promoted, Israel at the center of escalating conflicts, and a generation that may witness the final fulfillment of all prophecies. The question isn't whether these things will happen. Prophecy doesn't fail. The question is, where will you be when the final system is implemented? Will you be among those who remain faithful to God no matter the cost, or among those who accept the convenience of the beast's system? Heavenly judgment will review your name soon, if it hasn't already. Every choice you make now is being recorded, not in the books of human algorithms, but in the eternal records of heaven. Daniel saw these things and fainted from terror. But he also saw that in the end, those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars forever and ever. Choose today whom you will serve.